Welcome to this evening's Planning Committee, and we will start off by asking for apologies for absence. Laurie.
Chair, we received apologies for absence from Councillor Briggs and Councillor Tony Larkin. Councillor Gary is present here as a substitute.
Okay, thank you. Any urgent business? I've not had any introduced to me.
None have been notified to me, Chair.
Thank you. Are there any declarations of interest from the members of the committee? Yes, Councillor Price.
Item 7, the welcoming. I have a personal interest, Chair.
And what will we be doing as a consequence of that?
I'm unable to vote.
Councillor Mushtaq.
Same item, Chair. As Ward Councillor for Alexandra Ward, I've been heavily involved in discussions around the welcoming with both the applicant and a number of residents, so I think it's probably inappropriate for me to take part as well.
Okay, thank you. Well, you'll still be sitting through the meeting and you won't be leaving the room or anything? Okay, fine, thank you. I've not got any public questions unless any have come in.
None have been received, Chair.
Okay, can I ask for a mover and seconder for the meetings of the last meeting? Oh, okay, moved and second. Okay, we'll get on to the agenda. For the benefit of people who may not have attended before, we will take the order of the items really, if there's any public interest or speakers. So the one with the most interest will take first this evening. That will be item number 7. Sorry, that will be item number 8, the land at Primrose Bank. We have 2 speakers on this, and can I just sorry, I should have mentioned at the start, the committee is being filmed. From now on, all planning committee meetings will be filmed as a matter of course. If anybody, if any member of the public doesn't wish to be filmed, and they need to let us know, and we will try to make sure the camera doesn't point that way. Can I just ask the camera person that the speaker, the objector, Abdul Bashir, doesn't wish to be filmed, so you won't film him. Thank you. Okay, before we invite the speakers to come and address the committee, Martin, can I just ask you to introduce this item to us?
Thanks, Chair. Planning permission is sought for new warehousing accommodation and office facilities intended for first choice homes. The site is located within an allocated business employment area, and the site has previously been occupied by an industrial building. Members will recall deferring this application at their previous meeting, and that was to allow officers to discuss members' concerns in respect of the following matters. Number 1, why access cannot be provided from the north of the site. Number 2, what measures will be put in place to minimise pollution. Number 3, to ask whether the site can be reconfigured to allow the commercial activity to be sited further away to the eastern part of the site. And number 4 was to seek clarification on the expected vehicle movements per hour. The applicant's agent has provided a response to these matters, and that's addressed in your update report. In addition, since the previous meeting, the applicant has sought to address the concerns of the Coal Authority, and as a result they have removed their objection, and that's led to the removal of a condition which I believe is on your late list. Furthermore, the applicant has amended their application to extend the proposed opening hours to 7 AM until 6:30 PM on weekdays and 8 AM until 6 PM on Saturdays. The local planning authority has formally re-notified residents of this change, and additional representations have been reported, and those are in both the update report and additional ones in the late list. Members will note that officers, having again liaised with the Council's pollution control section, consider that opening at 7 AM during weekdays would have an unacceptable impact on residents living nearby, but 7:30 AM we consider would be acceptable. This is considered to be acceptable because it's expected that daytime activity begins from around this time in and around town centres. As such, members will note that condition number 9 on the recommendation has been amended to restrict opening before 7:30. To summarise the proposed development as a whole, the proposed warehousing accommodation provides just over 1,000 square metres of floor space, whilst the proposed offices involve the creation of approximately 480 square metres. The proposed warehousing is spread across a double height section of the building to the north of the site towards Crossbank Street, whilst a small single storey warehouse is adjacent to Primrose Bank, adjacent to staff facilities, with the proposed office accommodation above at first floor level. No so I don't need to say that. It's, the main issues to consider are the principle of the proposed development, access, parking, highway safety, amenity, design, energy, drainage and land contamination. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Could I then ask the first speaker to come to the table, please? Mr. Bashir. Have you got your time? Mr. Bashir, when you're ready, if you just press the button on your microphone, you've got 3 minutes. We'll remind you when you're 30 seconds. After that, you'll be asked to stop speaking. But if you just stay where you are, it may well be that the members want to ask you some questions. Okay, when you're ready.
Good evening and thank you for allowing me to speak. The issues concerning residents have been well documented previously in the letter dated 13th May 2016, which was signed by 44 residents and owners. Additional information to help to objectively assess the application has since been provided to the planning officer and the planning committee in the document titled Visual Context of Site and a video of the site layout on YouTube. The key issue is the safety and impact on the quality of life of all local residents as a result of the significant increase in traffic, particularly commercial traffic, in the residential streets surrounding the site. All of the issues are massively exacerbated by the nonsensical and very poor positioning and access of the car park for large work vehicles. While it's not the job of residents to come up with possible solutions, a simple alternative is to access the site's car park for large work vehicles via Minor Street. This would be safer, more efficient, cost-effective and remove the main issues of increased traffic on residential streets. This would somewhat address the key issue, firstly, which is very important, highway safety for residents and the public, particularly children and the elderly. It should be noted that there's a lack of open spaces for children to play in, and so the kids' pitch, which is adjacent to this large work vehicles car park, is in high demand. Primrose Bank, the street, is used by residents to get access to the main bus and tram stops and to access the community centre, schools, shops and other local amenities. So highway safety must be addressed. Traffic issues and the knock-on impact on Ashton Road and access to the town centre, dangerous driving conditions for residents, issues with parking, noise and air pollution and loss of privacy. The residents want access to the site, particularly the car park for large work vehicles via Minor Street. The existing road, Minor Street, can simply be extended by approximately 4 metres to access the site. We understand that Minor Street is a public road, so ownership of land adjacent to Minor Street should not be an issue. The council must obtain an independent, unbiased engineer's assessment of the viability of access via Minor Street. Ultimately, if this change cannot be implemented, then the site is not suitable and the planning application should be rejected. The residents do not feel that their concerns have been taken seriously, as none of the issues have been addressed, and instead the applicant has had the nerve to apply to increase the daily opening hours by 13%. We would like First Choice Homes to apply their own pillars and their own values to their application. Their pillars: our people, our homes, our communities and our business. Their values: we listen, we act, we keep it simple, we own, we learn, we care. First Choice Homes, please apply your pillars and your values to your own building and your own plan. Thank you.
Are there any questions? Yes, Councillor Blythe and then Councillor Fielding.
Could you tell me, and I know that area very well, but that play area, where would the next nearest play area for children be? Where?
As far as I understand, there isn't any sort of open pitch in the whole of Primrose Bank. So just to be clear, there is a little play area which is on Magnolia Gardens, which is the road directly opposite the warehouse, and that's where the community centre is. It's not an open play area, it's got like a slide for young children, but as far as I know, there isn't another open space in the whole of Primrose Bank.
Yeah, when you referred to the possibility of access via Minor Street, you said that it would be safer, more efficient and cost effective. I suppose safer and more efficient is a matter of opinion, but cost effective is, it either is or isn't. I'd like you to explain why you believe that it would be more cost effective, particularly given that you went on to say that you want the council to conduct a viability report into entrance from that direction. You know, if it's cost effective, why would we need to do that report?
Okay, so if I address the need for the report, we feel that's the council's job to independently and objectively assess any application as a matter of course. So if First Choice Homes, their own engineers, are saying that for whatever reason you can't access it, I think it requires an alternative view just to back up that argument. The arguments, as I understand it from First Choice Homes, is that, you know, they would need to build a brand new road 70 metres long and so forth. If you go down to the site, I don't think you need to be an expert to see that all that's required is extending the road simply by 4 metres up a slope. And the reason why I say it's cost effective is because large vehicles aren't going to cause a nuisance on residential streets. People aren't going to get knocked over and therefore being liable for, you know, additional compensation and so forth. So for the company themselves, in the longer term, it would actually be cheaper for them to come in via Minor Street, which is actually a commercial, everything around there's commercial anyway. So that's why I say it would be cost effective. The road itself, like I say, 4 metre strip of road, tarmacking that, I can't see that being very expensive. So that's the reason for that assertion.
Okay, thank you. Any more questions for Mr. Bashir? Okay, thank you very much, sir. Thank you. Okay, could I ask Mr. Brown, who's going to speak on behalf of the applicant? Again, sir, you'll be given 3 minutes. We'll remind you when you have 30 seconds.
Hi, good afternoon. We've answered the queries as the planner said in our response, but I'll summarise it for those present. In response to the queries raised by the residents on the last committee, I understand the desire to use Minor Street as the access road, and I've watched the video by the residents evaluating the area, but this all misses some very important issues. I could explain about the costs involved. The 70 metre length of road is accurate. 4 metres at 45 degrees just won't cut it. Your highways officer will not permit that. But I won't go through all that. I'll simply point out it's not our land. Our red line boundary is the edge of the land you see there. It's outside of our red line boundary, essentially. The access we have proposed requires relatively simple level alterations within our land, and it's the best solution to provide the necessary level access. For clarity, this is an industrial site, and the Highways Officer recommends this for approval with the access we've proposed. It's simply not possible to provide a road as the resident suggests. I can go through that further in the questions, but I appreciate I've only got 3 minutes. With regard to question 2, the measures to be put in place to minimise pollution from vehicles, there was a question raised regarding pollution adjacent to the football court. It's not a children's play area, it's a football court, although obviously children may play there. First Choice Homes use a vehicle tracking module on their cars which forces drivers to turn off their engines whenever they are stationary. This includes in the yard area. So there shouldn't be any pollution from stationary vehicles. It should also be noted that the football court is open air, so circulation of air is as good as it can be. And generally speaking, the site is in a highly sustainable location. It's next to bus routes, the Metrolink, and we're providing cycle parking and showers to further encourage sustainable mode of travel for staff. With regard to question 3, could the site be reconfigured to put the service yard to the east to minimise noise disruption? Unfortunately, no. We did look at this very early on. The existing roundabout is not suitable for manoeuvring of HGVs, and costly improvements would be needed to upgrade it. The narrowing of the site at this end, towards Ashton Road, also means the space needed to provide the service yard would push the building right up towards the houses at the other end of the site. This in turn would mean additional retaining wall structures, which is more cost. The offices would then overlook the houses on Primrose Bank. There would be health and safety issues because we'd be having refuse, staff, the yard area, deliveries, all within one area, which I'm sure you appreciate is a problem in terms of the running of the business. But most importantly, we would lose parking, which would make the proposals unsuitable for First Choice Homes. Clarification on the expected vehicle movements. We've provided full details of vehicle movements in the transport statement that you've had since June. However, for ease, staff arriving by car are expected to generate 11 vehicle movements at peak times, the service yard 24 vehicle movements at peak times, and there will obviously be other comings and goings throughout the day, but generally First Choice Homes systems allow the vast majority of the vans to remain away from the site almost indefinitely. I hope that's sufficient. If any questions.
Are there any questions? Yeah, Councillor White.
They can control all their own vehicles. I understand that. What you have no control over, and they never do, and it happens constantly, is when the 40-footer comes delivering to that depot. And if that's opening at 7:30, I will guarantee there'll be one there at 6:30 with his engine running in winter to keep warm on that side street. And you can't control that. And you never can. Because I live opposite the rear of a supermarket and it doesn't open while 8 o'clock, but guess what time they arrive, the bread man? And then their own delivery van. They arrive between 6 and 7:30 and they sit there with the engines running. I bought that house with that already there, and that's up to me. But these people haven't had that, and they will have it. And you won't be able to control it. You tell me how you're going to control that.
Well, I can only say First Choice Homes would run policies that would try and prevent that. They would ask, obviously, deliveries and they would arrange deliveries to not occur that early in the morning.
And that would be it, they would ask.
Well, yes.
Doesn't work.
Could I ask you to expand on the issue of Minor Street? It's a very important point that people need to be absolutely clear on.
Certainly, yes. I appreciate that the resident thinks that we can just put a 4-metre length of road. That even in the resident's own video is acknowledged that it's at least 35 degrees. It's a 4-metre change in level, if you can still hear me. Have you got the, can I get the site plan up? This is a 4-metre change in level. This is 189, this is 193. 4-metre change in level from here, remains flat, steeply banks. That's a 4-metre change in level over about 5 or 6 metres. Your highways officer will allow 1 in 10. If she was here, she would tell you, which means to do that 4 metres, you'd have to go back at least 60 metres, 70 metres over here, which means we'd be looking at essentially a 60, 70 metre length of road. You've obviously got the fill, because you've got a 4-metre drop. So you've got at least, and I've calculated this, 1,500 cubic metres of fill just to be able to get you to a level where you could construct the road. I can tell you now, I'd have no problem telling you that would be a 6-figure sum to build that road.
Okay. Can I ask you now to, just following on from Councillor Blythe's concern about vehicles outside your control, vehicles within your control that are parked in the yard, you mentioned that there's some sort of device in that forces drivers to switch the engine off. Does the driver have to do that physically, and what happens if they don't?
As I understand it, First Choice Homes have, it's a fully integrated system, so they essentially log all the components that are on the vehicles, any sort of items they use, deliveries. They also log how the drivers use the vehicles. So they want to maintain that petrol is not being used. They want to maintain that they have I think it's called a good driver scheme. So they monitor how the vehicles are used by each driver, and when they're using vehicles, if they're stopping vehicles and running the engine, it's marked down. So essentially the drivers are scored based on the way in which they use vehicles, and every time they use a vehicle, that's monitored.
Just one more question, going back to the HGV deliveries. Can you tell us roughly how many deliveries per week you have and what times they generally arrive?
Sure. As I say, it was all in the transport statement, but just to summarise, they have obviously a larger fleet, but there's a maximum of 20 vehicles, smaller vehicles that can arrive on site. They have deliveries supplies from larger vehicles up to HGVs approximately 5 times per day. They occur throughout the day. There's a peak period of, I think it's 9 while 10, then again at 12 while 1, and then again at 3 while 4. I think it might be 4 while 5. There's a potential skip or refuse collection up to 3 times per week, but that again is being looked at because they're potentially changing the way they deal with waste strategy, so that may come down, but I would assume 3 times per week at the moment. And there are potentially 20 vehicles parked on site in the evenings.
Are there any more questions to Mr. Brown? No? Okay, thank you very much, sir. Thank you. Okay, just before we move on, can I just ask the planning officers to the objector has called for an independent engineering assessment on this. In planning terms, is that something that we need to do by law? Is it something that we should do? Is it something that we do as a matter of course?
Clearly, what we have to do as the local planning authority is determine the plans that are put before us. So in this particular case, the access is obviously proposed in the location shown on the site plan. There's no policy requirement for them to demonstrate that other potential accesses that may form an alternative scheme. There's no policy requirement for those to be required.
Okay, it's open for debate. Yeah, Councillor Iqbal.
Thank you, Chair. My concerns are that the actual bend on Primrose Bank, currently is used as a speed track, and with having the additional access where the first homes are proposing to have the entrance, it's going to cause basically traffic blind spots. I know I can see the planning officers have imposed a traffic island to reduce the traffic coming out of Hoyle Avenue, but I still think there's going to be major congestion and a traffic blind spot on that corner where they come around Primrose Bank and they hit the junction there. So I sympathise with the residents. I really sympathise with the residents that this is going to be imposed on them.
Councillor Mushtaq, then Councillor Blythe, then Councillor Hudson.
Chair, I just wanted to check, because this is a deferred item, what's the situation with those that weren't present at the last meeting?
Yeah, a good point. Anyone who wasn't at the last meeting isn't allowed to vote. And thank you for reminding me. I noticed Councillor Hewitt came in late. You won't be able to vote on this item either, I'm afraid. Can I just... Is that correct? Yes, thank you. Okay, I think Councillor Blythe, then Councillor Hudson.
It's just a clarification. Mr Brown said there'd be 5 deliveries a day. If you actually read the traffic study, which I have, it's 8 a day, not 5. So almost 50% more, almost double what he says. It's 5 a day from suppliers with 3 a day from Wolseley. Wolseley just happens to be a supplier. Just because they've named him, he'll still be using up to 40-foot trucks. So it's 8 a day. Let's just bear that in mind.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I can't. Councillor Hudson.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd just like to ask the planning officer, this is an area, I'm always conscious that we are being pushed by everybody to build houses, and I try to be as positive as I can. And I think this area, over the last 40 or 50 years, it's never had as few houses as it has now. So I can well see why the planning officer is trying to build on this particular site. But I want to ask him, we delayed this, especially so these talks could go forward. And I thought tonight when we started, it was quite good news that we'd got some togetherness on this. But it wouldn't seem that from listening to the speakers. So I would like to ask the planning officer, when we delayed it so that we could get this further information and ask about these times and look into the problems of access and what have you, does he think we've made any progress?
What I've obviously got to be mindful of is that officers in the previous meeting recommended that the application be approved. So I can't obviously go back on that position. What we were obviously listened to all the concerns that have been flagged up by residents and the concerns shared by members, which we've obviously gone away, had discussions with the applicant. And in response, that I appreciate they haven't changed the plans. The plans haven't changed, so they've instead come back with justification setting out why, in planning terms, the proposal is acceptable from their perspective and why alternative while alternatives, which might be better in some ways, cannot be delivered.
I've just asked the office to see if you can address the issue of the 8 movements. Yeah, I think we did defer this. We asked them, we wanted clarification on a number of points. They have delivered that clarification, and it was hoped that they might enter into some discussion with residents. Whether they've done that or not, I don't know, but that's their choice to do that or not to do that. Can I just make a very pedantic point, John, that it's not the planning officer who wants to build here. It's the applicant who wants to build here. The planning officer has to. I know, but I feel it's a point that sometimes the local planning authority is people think that it's the planning authority who want to build on these sites. The planning authority has a duty to look at the application. It's not they who want to build. I understand. Yes.
I think we do a disservice to people in Oldham and everywhere else if we assume that residents don't understand who's asking to build. Residents know more than we think. The fact that they sometimes vote not as we think doesn't mean they don't understand. It just means that you're out of touch.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Okay.
Just had a look at the transport statement. So in terms of traffic movements, the section I'm looking at says, I'll just quote it, there will be a number of traffic movements during the day, i.e. 5 a day associated with suppliers, 3 a day associated with the Wolsey and a potential skip collection.
Yeah,
so sorry, in total. Yeah.
I'm sorry, Mr. Brenner. Okay. Is there anything else anybody wants to add to the debate? No? Well, in that case, we'll move to the vote then. It is recommended for approval. Can I see a show of hands, or do I have any other proposal at this point? Councillor McCann.
Could I ask about the hours? Because apart from the site, I think the hours are actually another factor. And I do think going for a 7 a.m. is a bit cheeky, given the fact that people live there, and then the industrial. I stick with our 8 o'clock actually.
Yeah, that's a good point. The hours are actually 7:30. They've not. The officers have not allowed them to have the 7 a.m. So they've moved it to 7:30. But it's something that the committee could alter if they so wished. So again.
I'll second that alteration to 8 o'clock.
Okay, if it's approved. Okay, so again, can I ask, it is recommended for approval, so all those in favour of approval, can you please show? Yes, with an 8 o'clock start. Okay, against? Any abstentions? Okay, the application is approved with an 8 o'clock start, and I think it might be good. I know that the Ward Council have worked hard with a very articulate residents group, and I think you'll need to continue that and get First Choice Homes involved over the coming months. Okay, thank you. We'll move on to the next item then. And if anybody wishes to leave at this point, we'll just have a 30-second break while people do so. Okay, we'll move on to the next one. The next one we speak is item 7, pages 19 to 26, the welcome in. We have 2 speakers. We have an objector and the applicant. Before I ask the speakers to come forward, can I just ask Martin to run through the application for us?
Thank you, Chair. This application comprises 2 distinct parts. The first relates to the change of use of the vacant public house to a dwelling house with a single storey rear extension. The second element relates to the change of use of part of the car park formerly associated with the pub to a car valeting use, including the erection of a 2.1 metre high fence around its proposed curtilage. In summary, officers consider the proposed use of the public house to a dwelling is acceptable, and this has in fact previously been granted planning permission in 2011. The extension has already been built, and this planning application seeks to regularise that position. However, the proposed car valeting business on part of the adjacent car park is not considered to be acceptable due to its industrial appearance, having particular regard to the proposed fencing, its impacts on residential amenity caused primarily by powered equipment and frequency of vehicular movements, together with its impact on highway safety due to the likelihood of vehicles queuing on the public highway. Therefore, the main issues to consider are the principle of the proposals, the impact on nearby Grade 2 listed buildings, the design and its appearance, residential amenity and highway safety. Although I think it's important to note that although officers are supportive of the residential elements of the proposal, as you'll see in your reports, the local planning authority does not have the power or the ability to issue split decisions. So therefore, if members obviously support the recommendation, it would be a refusal of the application in its entirety. You haven't got the option of choosing which bits.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Could I ask is it Nicholas Downant? Sorry, it's all scrub out, I can't read it properly. Mr. Dowdall, thank you. I expect you've cottoned on by now. 3 minutes when you start. Press the button and we'll remind you when there's 30 seconds.
Good evening. I want to talk to you on behalf of the majority of the residents of Linley Drive and the associated areas. The residents are opposed to the change of use from A4 to B1 commercial due to the residential character of the area and the loss of amenity due to the expected light industrial use. The key areas are the noise that it's expected to generate and the fact that the properties adjacent to it are within 10 metres. So we're looking at 4 or 5 properties that will be directly on the boundary, and then there's another 5 or 6 on the further side that have got a larger gap but are still within earshot. We've got issues with the possible light pollution that the site will require to be operable. The lights will directly into the back of the properties, some of them having windows that will overlook the site. If the use goes ahead, we think there will be a possible water spray issue due to the use of pressure washers, and it is expected that that will be carried by the wind onto adjacent properties, including the possibility of chemical contamination due to the cleaning product. Vehicular access on site is already very difficult and is a congested junction. The junction has recently had a permanent island installed which further constrains traffic and would make the new use even more difficult. The possible issue would be queuing traffic that would then queue across Abbey Hills Road and onto a major thoroughfare through the area. The area is primarily residential. The site is within a residential area and light industrial buildings would not be in keeping with the general character and could cause a reduction in house values that has already happened on 2 properties. The further use is a key area of concern. If regraded, the site would be approved for a number of types of light industrial use, not just the usage that is requested. We would hope that this would be thought of as it will cause a nuisance to adjacent properties and the local area on a wider side. Our key concern is that once graded B1, the property could then be split in the future and would be a possible means of selling it, and then the current control would be lost. We have concerns over children in the local area using the footpath that the business will actually cut across to gain access to school, and we even have a crossing supervisor outside the establishment morning and evening. When the actual site was purchased, it was purchased with planning permission to change the use to residential from A4, which has now lapsed due to the applicant's failure to meet council stipulations. It is hoped, and it is our request, that the planning as it stands will be rejected and the site in future will be used for residential use as its intention was when he purchased the property. Thank you.
Okay, any questions? No? Oh, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, as you look going up Abbey Hills Road, there's an old petrol station that's been converted into a car washing stroke valeting business, and next to it the Speedy Clutch, what's a mechanic's garage in a brick building. But that is all quite low noise, but obviously there is the water and contamination hazard that comes onto Abbey Hills from that business already.
Okay, thank you very much. Could I ask Ikra Afzal, please, who is speaking on behalf of the applicant? And again, when you're ready, just press the button and you've 3 minutes. We'll remind you when you've 30 seconds.
Good evening everyone, and thank you for allowing me to speak. I'm the applicant's daughter, and obviously this application is very personal to us. Firstly, I'd like to say no one had an issue when the property was a pub. Now, a pub has more noise levels, it is not residential friendly. Drinking can cause violence, noise levels will be very high, and it's not friendly for children. Now, by converting this into a residential aspect where a family would be living there, an immediate family of 10, I don't think that this is going against a residential use. Now, a car valeting aspect to this, the volume of a jet wash, a vacuum, is less noise than a volume caused by a pub, is less noise than violence caused. The reason why we'd like a car wash is we do not want too many alterations. As you can already see, the cost is adding up. By employing 2 to 3 people, we are causing more jobs. It's beneficial to taxpayers as it's reducing the amount of benefits the government will be paying out. Now, for cars coming in and out, we do and we wish to only have a set number of vehicles, which is very small. Also, we'll have personal family cars. We do not wish to cause risks to the area, as us ourselves have a lot of young children in our home, so we wouldn't do that to anyone else either. With regard to the fences, now the fences, people say, do not look very residential, and it doesn't add any aspect to the residential area. It doesn't look friendly. Well, we can paint these to a different colour, a brighter colour, to make them look residential. Now, we have had issues when we've had the fences taken down. As people are saying, there are loads of untidiness in the area. The untidiness is caused because when we do have skips, the local residents decide to come and fly tip. When they fly tip, we call the police. The police cannot do anything. They don't let anyone clean it up because it's private property. I find it unfair how we put skips out there. We pay for the cost for other people's rubbish to be dumped. All we want is the planning to go through, and we will make sure it stays tidy. We want to live there. We're not going to live in some horrible place. We're not going to make our area look untidy. Us as neighbours would have the necessity to keep it clean. Now, with the car valeting aspect, we would request temporary planning permission, at least a trial of 12 months. The council can see if it does go well, then it's in our favour, and if it doesn't, at least you did give us that chance. You gave that family a chance to have a business, to make more jobs. I just want you to take into consideration, it's a family living in a small home. We'd like to move into a bigger home as soon as possible. Their children with dreams of moving in there, and people just affecting it.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. Are there any questions? No? No questions. Okay, thank you very much indeed. Okay, we've heard the 2 speakers. We can't issue a split decision, so we either approve or refuse this. Has anybody anything they want to add to this? No? Okay, well, the recommendation is refusal. Can I see a show of hands for that, please? Okay, any abstentions? Oh, sorry, is there anybody who approves it? Sorry, is anybody in favour? No, 1 abstention. Okay, Laurie? Okay, well, that application is refused. Thank you. Okay, we've one more item with a speaker. This is number 6, yeah. Mr. Charlton's going to speak on behalf of the applicant. This is item number 6, pages 13 to 18. Mr. Charlton, if you just want to come forward, and Martin will just introduce it to us.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll just give it 30 seconds for people to vacate. I think we have a slight technical hitch as well behind us. Okay, all right, Martin. Anyway.
Right, this application proposes various extensions and alterations to the existing dwelling and the construction of a new outbuilding. The site is located within the Greenbelt, and the size of the proposed extensions is considered to represent inappropriate development within the Greenbelt for the purposes of the National Planning Policy Framework. Inappropriate development in the Greenbelt is by definition harmful to it. However, it can be supported where very special circumstances exist which outweigh that harm. In this case, a very large outbuilding exists within the curtilage of the dwelling house, which is visible from long distance views, has little architectural merit, and appears as an obvious feature within the landscape. As part of the proposals, this building would be demolished and replaced with a much smaller outbuilding, which due to the topography of the land would largely be concealed and screened from long distance views. The demolition of the large outbuilding from the site is to be secured by condition number 4, which you'll see on your recommendation. And as noted on the late list, permitted development rights are to be removed to prevent any further development on the site without the benefit of further planning permission. Therefore, the main issues to consider are whether the principle of the proposal is acceptable, having regard to the Greenbelt location, the impact on the visual amenity and openness of the Greenbelt, design and residential amenity. Members are also asked to note, whilst the recommendation is for approval, the application has been recently advertised as it being a departure from the local plan due to the Greenbelt issues. Therefore, a decision cannot be issued until the 15th of September, which represents the expiration of the consultation period. And members are also asked to note the comments on the late list. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Charlton.
Thank you, Chairman. I really just had a few points to the planning officer because I think he's covered most of the issues that I was going to take up. Temple Bar Farm consists both of the original farmhouse and a separate, partly two-storey outbuilding that is of a shape and design that does not sit easily into the landscape. The size and volume of the outbuilding will be significantly reduced in the proposals by a new, smaller building. The overall increase in volume, including the extension to the house and the reduction in volume of the outbuilding, produces a volume of some 29%. The normal guideline for an appropriate development definition is 33.33%. So we are well below the normal guideline taken overall. So in our view, the proposal complies with Greenbelt policy. The proposal will also produce an attractive design that will be improvement to the existing, not just the house itself, but the area around it. The applicant, he's moved into the premises already. He will upgrade the fields that are part of the holding, restore the garden areas and the stone walls and landscape the area immediately around the house. There will then, as well as the compliance with Greenbelt policy, there will then be a significant improvement in the appearance of the area. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, anybody got any questions for Mr. Charlton? No? Thank you. Okay, thank you. Okay. The recommendation is approval. Any comments? Councillor McCann?
Thank you, Chair. I think actually, could you put the elevations up, the picture of the elevations, because this is one of my concerns. Next one, please, one with the big windows. Yeah. This one. On the middle, those two there seem to be two large blocks of window along with a connecting window tunnel. So we had recently here an application which we refused for a building in Delft in the Greenbelt, and one of the reasons was the amount of glass which will be visible across the valley and would indeed reflect an awful lot across the valley, making it even more visible. And I would suggest that this may well fall into the same category, so perhaps the officer could tell me that indeed that is glass, and really how much percentage of that building will have a glass frontage on it. That's the first one. And the second question is really at the bottom of page 15, that rather large paragraph at the bottom of the main section. It says the increase in the size of the building is approximately 79% over and above the size of the original dwelling. So could the officer confirm as to whether it's the original dwelling size for Greenbelt purposes or the current build size for Greenbelt purposes of increase? And given the fact that the inspector turned down the Delft application, one of his main reasons was the design of the building and the amount of the glass. I do think that is relevant to this one, and whilst I can see the need for change on this, and whilst I would like to get rid of the outbuilding, I'm not certain that what is replacing it actually reflects anything like a farmhouse. So I'll be grateful, Chair, for the officer's comments.
I can't really clarify the percentage of glass in there, but you can see that the proposed extension has a large glazed element to it. Obviously, it is what it is. It's a contemporary addition to a more traditional Greenbelt farmhouse, if you like. There are certain sections of the building which will be visible from the longer distance views across the valley behind. But the topography of the land, including that on the actual site itself, could at least break that up. In respect of the sort of glare and reflection from glazing, you know, I take the point really. It may be that we could ask, obviously if it's approved, for a specification of the glazing via a condition to make sure that that's taken into account. But that's the only thing I can suggest. You know, if members have those concerns, they can either ask the applicant to review it, or as I said, use of a condition.
Could you comment on the size?
The size is a particularly interesting point, really. I say that because there's a lot of underbuild that's not visible above ground level, and I think the larger of those figures, the 79%, I'm certain that includes the volume of the outbuildings as well as the underbuild. So there's a lot of stuff going on beneath the subterranean level, if you like, that you wouldn't necessarily see above the normal ground level. But at the back of all this, what we have been mindful of is what we call the fallback position, which is certain extensions that could be done to the building, including large outbuildings, without needing any form of planning application at all. So at the back, we've got that at the back of our minds as well, which is sort of fed into this recommendation.
Could I suggest, Chair, that the officers look at having some one of the modern glasses that won't actually create what I can only describe as a wonderful glare across the valley, given the way that window will face the sun, if that's possible. Okay, Councillor Kirkland.
Thank you, Chair. Firstly, I'll hit on Councillor McCann's point about it was turned down in Delft for similar sort of project. It wasn't, it was an eco house. It was all glass. I think that's why, and it just would not have fitted in that area. This application, in my opinion, no problem with it at all. It's already a beautiful building as it is. You know, the glass, I don't think would have much of an impact because it's not all glass. It's a mixture, and it's simply progress. And even though it's in Greenbelt, I can't see it being an issue at all. So it's just a statement, really, Chair. Thank you.
My question is so similar to Councillor McCann's about volume, it's not worth asking.
Councillor Riddlesworth,
I think the thing that concerns me is that, appreciating it on green belt land, at the moment we've got a building which is a traditional farmhouse and typical for that area. And while I agree that the outbuilding existing is an eyesore, it actually did what it was supposed to do, and that was act as a farm building. And so therefore, I'm not saying that we shouldn't demolish an ugly building, but whether or not we should actually replace it with something which is no more than a leisure building, I have my doubts about. And so therefore, I really don't think we should take the volume of the outbuilding into account when we allow the extra onto the original farmhouse. So personally, I think it is overdevelopment in the green belt.
Rod, did you want to?
It was just on that, set the percentages as well. And if we're going to, if it's mindful to approve, can we have a condition for non-reflective glass? Not the opposite manner, but non-reflective glasses. It's a bit dearer, but
So I just want to come back on the volumes really, just for clarity. What we are saying here is that it is inappropriate development in the green belt. What we're not saying is it's appropriate development in the green belt, and there's a distinct difference. When Alan Chorlton spoke, he mentioned the 33.3% figure. That is a kind of a rule of thumb as to the volume that extensions can be to original buildings and be a acceptable form of development in the green belt. In other words, not inappropriate. So this application we accept is inappropriate development. We've advertised it in that way, and it's the very special circumstances by the loss of the very large outbuilding that have been weighed up and have led in favour of the support of the application.
Okay, well again, it's recommended for approval. I think if members are minded to approve, I think it would be useful to ask that we condition the officers check the specification of the glass to check that it isn't going to cause any reflection problems across the valley. I don't think that's unreasonable to put in. With that in mind, and if we accept that condition, can I have a show of hands for approval? That's just, okay. Okay, against? 2 against. The application is approved with that additional condition.
Minded to approve.
Sorry, yes, we're minded to approve, subject to approval from
the expiry of the consultation.
Yeah, for expiry of the consultation period. Okay, now then, the next 3 are very similar. So, Martin, can I just ask you to explain the 3 of them on block? We'll have to. Oh, sorry. Hannah, can you explain on block? I mean, we'll have to go through the formal process of approving each one individually, but if you can just explain them, all 3 of them. Yeah. So this is items 10, 11 and 12.
Right, so if I go through items 9 and 10 initially, this is for 38 and 44 Yorkshire Street. So item 9 relates to the first floor and the second floor. The site comprises a mid-terrace, a 2-storey building in the town centre. This application proposes to change the use of the first and second floor from a bar and a storage area into an office, and the basement and ground floor from also a bar and storage area to an office. Now for item 9, the proposed office opening hours would be from 9 AM till 9 PM each day of the week, and item 10 for the same. There's no objection from pollution control, and given the town centre location, the redevelopment of the building is considered to meet the criteria to meet local and national policy. Therefore, the main issues for the consideration comprise the principle of development, the impact on the level of residential amenity, and the effect on parking and highway safety. Members, please note that Oldham Council's the applicant, and we've got some comments on the late list where they haven't changed the plans, they've just made them clearer.
Okay. Yeah, what, because
Sorry, I
all
know
three, it's okay, don't worry. Could you just turn your mic on? Yeah, because they were very similar, I just thought we don't need to listen to the same story on each one, but we will have to formally do each one in and so...
I just want to move them. I think it'll be a vast improvement, Chairman.
Okay. Okay, well, we'll have to do them individually, I understand. So,
I'll move number 9
number 8 first.
I haven't said 8 yet.
Okay, so, okay, it's moved and seconded. All those in favour of approval? And that is unanimous, yes. Okay, so can I move then to item...
So I spoke about 9 and 10 in that one, because item 11 is for a different...
Yes, of course, yeah, item 11 is different, I do apologise. So, item 10 then. You move that, second, all those in favour? Again, unanimous. Helen's just going to have to explain item 11 to us, sorry, because it is slightly different.
Sorry, it's pretty much the same. It's just for 46 and 48 instead of 38 and 44. It relates the basement and ground floor of numbers 46 to 48 Yorkshire Street. The site comprises a prominent corner plot in the town centre and is occupied by a vacant 2-storey double-fronted building. The application proposes to change the use of the basement and ground floor from a bar to a retail shop and the replacement of the existing front with a traditional frontage. The proposed opening hours are between 9 and 6 from Monday to Saturday and 10 till 4 on Sundays and bank holidays. The proposed retail shop would initially employ 4 full-time pers, and given the town centre location, the redevelopment of the building is considered acceptable. There's no objection raised by pollution control in regards to the proposed development, and the main issues for consideration comprise the principle of development, the effect on amenity, the shopfront design, and the effect on parking and highway safety. Again, members are asked to note the comments on the late list in regards to this application.
We have a mover and seconder for that? Or speaker? Yeah.
Can you give me a definition for a traditional shop front, since traditional shop fronts vary from 1850 right up to 1990 and up to 2000, so I'd like to know what we'd class as a traditional shop front. And is it a traditional sweet shop, a traditional cloth shop?
Do you remember the 1850s ones?
Oh, it does, yeah, it does, yeah.
Thought as much.
I will move the recommendation, but I wanted to, yeah, just to test. I just haven't seen it before, so I thought we'd put it through the test.
I would have one if it were a knocking shop. Apply.
What's one of them?
Oh, you don't tell me.
More folk in Oldham know about that than know about clothes shop and sweet shop.
To answer your question, the double-fronted shop front would be replaced by a traditional appearance frontage. The openings and display windows would remain a similar size, but the proposed shop front would introduce features such as decorative pilasters, consoles and cornice with a refreshed fascia sign even.
Are you still moving that one? Okay. Have we got a second? We've got a second. All those in favour of approval? Again, unanimous. Thank you. The final one, item 12, is a relation to an employee of the council. That's why it's here. So,
I'll move it.
okay. Yeah. Do I have a seconder for that? All those in favour of approval? Unanimous. Thank you. That's the end of the meeting tonight. Please note the appeals. We've lost a couple, but we've still got a good record. Thank you very much indeed.